Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Mythological Friday. I am actually pre-recording this video this week because I wanted to include some heavier discussion. So the myth I'm reading this week is about Demeter and Persephone. It is a gorgeous myth about the love of a mother, and so I wanted to honor that in choosing this myth for Mother's Day weekend upcoming. But it also talks about springtime, and there's some great themes about womanhood and things like that in this myth as well. So I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. It can be just like all of our myths. There are some problematic things that happen. In this one in particular, it's kidnapping. I'm going to be reading the rated G version of this myth for the first part, but then I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to look back at the myth with the more mature look at it, a more critical look at it. So if you are one of my awesome younger cousins who I know watches this video every week, hello kids, I love you guys so much. And pause the video, stop the video, parents, whenever we get to a bit more, I'll let you guys know when. Just because I want to make sure that we're really looking at this myth and that my high school students who can handle the more adult material a bit differently can also benefit from a more critical view. So anyways, for all that stuff aside, I love this myth, and there's a lot of really great, webtoons and things like that depicting it. The story of Demeter and Persephone ties in well with the coming of springtime, flowers blooming, but also whenever the seasons change. I also like this myth because we see the passion and love a mother has for their daughter. So let's go ahead and begin. All right. Once again, Delaire's the graphics or the pictures are so pretty. So here we see, make sure I get the whole image in there. Persephone grew up on Olympus, and her gay laughter rang through the brilliant halls. She was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and her mother loved her so dearly she could not bear to have her daughter she could not bear to have her daughter out of her sight. When Demeter sat on her golden throne, her daughter was always on her lap. When she went down to earth to look after her trees and fields, she took Persephone. Wherever Persephone danced on her light feet, flowers sprang up. She was so lovely and full of grace that even Hades, who saw so little, noticed her and fell in love with her. He wanted her for his queen, but he knew that her mother would never consent to part with her, so he decided to carry her off. Okay, so here we see the picture of Persephone being kidnapped. One day, Persephone ran about the meadow, gathering flowers. She strayed from her mother and the attending nymphs. Suddenly, the ground split open. From the yawning crevice came a dark chariot drawn by black horses. At the reins stood grim Hades. He seized the terrified girl, turned his horses, and plunged into the cleft. Persephone's cries for help died out as the ground closed again as suddenly as it had opened. Up in the field, a little swineherd stood and wept over the pigs he had lost. See, look, there are his pigs. While Demeter rushed wildly about the meadow, looking for it in vain for her daughter, who had vanished without leaving a trace. With the frightened girl in his arms, Hades raced his snorting horses down from the sunlit world. Down and down they sped up on the dark path to his dismal underground palace. He led weeping Persephone in, seated her beside him on the throne of black marble, and decked her out in gold and precious stones. But these jewels brought her no joy. She wanted no cold stones. She longed for the warmth of sunshine and flowers and her golden-tressed mother. Let's see, we see the underworld. Dead souls crawled out of cracks and crevices to look at their new queen. while ever more souls came across the Styx, and Persephone watched them drink from a spring under dark poplars. It was the spring of Lethe, and those who drank from its waters forgot who they were and what they had done on earth. Rhadamanthus, a judge of the dead, dealt out punishment to the souls of great sinners. They were sentenced to suffer forever under the whips of the avenging Erinyes. Heroes were led to the Elysian fields, where they lived happily ever after in the never-failing light. Around the palace of Hades, there was a garden where whispering poplars and weeping willows grew. They had no flowers and bore no fruit, and no birds sang in their branches. There was only one tree in the whole realm of Hades that bore fruit, and this was the pomegranate tree. The gardener of the underworld offered the tempting pomegranates to the queen, but Persephone refused to touch the food of the dead. If you kind of think about it, like if you ever break open the flesh of a pomegranate, it does kind of, maybe we'll get to that in the next section. Sorry, parents. Wordlessly, she walked through the garden at silent Hades' side, and slowly her heart turned to ice. Above, on earth, Demeter ran about searching for her lost daughter. All of nature grieved with her. Flowers wilted, trees lost their leaves, and the fields grew barren and cold. In vain did the plow cut through icy ground. Nothing could sprout and nothing can grow, while the goddess of the harvest wept and wept. People and animals starved, and the gods begged Demeter again to bless the earth. But she refused to let anything grow until she found her daughter. Bent with grief, Demeter turned into an old gray woman. She returned to the meadow where Persephone had vanished and asked the sun if he had seen what had happened. The sun said no. Dark clouds had hidden his face that day. She wandered around the meadow, and after a while, she met a youth whose name was Triptolemus. He told her that his brother, a swineherd, had seen his pigs disappear into the ground and had heard the frightened screams of a girl. Demeter now understood that Hades had kidnapped her daughter, and her grief turned to anger. She called to Zeus and said that she would never again make the earth green if it did not command Hades to return to Persephone. I'm going to put the book down, it's a little heavy. Zeus could not let the world perish and sent Hermes down to Hades, bidding him to let Persephone go. Even Hades had to obey the order of Zeus and sadly said farewell to the queen. I'll show you guys a picture. So here we see, with his bident, Hades, Persephone, Hermes, with his caduceus, his traveler's cap, and there we see the tree of pomegranates. Joyfully, Persephone leaped to her feet, but as she was leaving with Hermes, a hooting laugh came from the garden. There stood a gardener of Hades. He pointed to the pomegranate, which a few kernels were missing. Persephone, lost in thought, had eaten the seeds, he said. Then dark Hades smiled. He watched Hermes lead Persephone up the bright world above. He knew she must return to him, for she had tasted the food of the dead. When Persephone appeared again on earth, Demeter sprang to her feet with a cry of joy and rushed to greet her daughter. "Dear child," she said. Look, there it is. Happy mother and daughter. You see, it's like dark under here. Oh, look at the little owl. It's kind of dark down below. She's coming out, and these beautiful flowers are sprouting out of the earth. We see all the fields of wheat, the golden sunshine. Okay. She blessed her fields, and the flowers bloomed anew, and the grains ripened. No longer was she a sad old woman, but a radiant goddess. "Dear child," she said, "never again shall we be parted. Together we will make all nature bloom. But joy soon changed to sadness, for Persephone had to admit she tasted the food of the dead and must return to Hades. However, Zeus decided that mother and daughter should not be parted forever. He ruled that Persephone had to return to Hades and spend 1 month in the underworld for each seed she had eaten. Every year when Persephone left her, Demeter grieved. Nothing grew, and the earth turned to winter. But as soon as her daughter's light footsteps were heard, the whole earth burst into bloom. Spring had come. As long as mother and daughter were together, the earth was warm and bore fruit. Demeter was a kind goddess. She did not want mankind to starve during the cold months of winter when Persephone was away. She lent her chariot, laden with grain, to Triptolemus, the youth that had helped her find her lost daughter. She told him to scatter her golden grain over the world and teach men how to sow it in spring and reap it in the fall and store it away for the long months again when earth was barren and cold. Once again, this is coming from Delaire's, which if you need a great Greek myths children's book, it makes a wonderful gift. I think it does a great job. The images are always gorgeous. So this is a great myth, and we normally teach it to talk about springtime becoming summer to fall to winter. Remember that Greek myths, they were not only just the religious aspect that the ancient peoples practiced in, but they also demonstrated a certain understanding that the people wanted to. They wanted to know how the world worked and why it was the way it was. The same way that we do today, it's just centuries ago. And so we need to remember that myths were used a lot of times to explain the nature of things in the Greek world, the ancient Greek world. So looking at this myth, we see that they told this story to explain the seasons. Whenever it's winter, Persephone is down in the underworld. And whenever it is springtime and summer, she is, up here on earth with us with all the blooming flowers. I know here in Texas, we have these gorgeous springtime flowers called bluebonnets. So maybe wherever you are, you have some beautiful springtime flowers that you'd like to share as well.